So here are my 5 ways to learn from everything. Okay, carrying on from the live that I posted just a little while ago on my timeline. So number 1 is cultivate an attitude of learning. Of course, if you want to learn from everything, you're going to need an attitude of learning, and the more that you cultivate that attitude of learning, the more natural that it will become to you. When things go wrong, get stuck in and find out why they went wrong. Don't just walk away and go, oh, that went wrong. Review it and have a look at it, take it apart and find out what exactly went wrong and where would be the most effective way to change it to get a better result next time. And when things go right, do exactly the same. Don't just pat yourself on the back and get on with things. Take it apart and analyse exactly what went right, what allowed your project to be a success. Because you need to know this stuff. If you're going to replicate that success in the future, you need to know exactly what works and what doesn't work. So you want to find out the what works, the why it works, the how it works, and then you'll naturally start to think about what else you could do with that information. So that's the cultivating an attitude of learning. Be curious, be interested, be keen to get stuck in and find out what exactly is going on there. And that applies to everything and anything that you do. Number 2, ways to learn from everything is ask great questions. Okay, so when somebody's already got a good skill, if you want to learn that skill off them, it's all about the questions that you ask. And asking the right questions will give you the right information. Make your questions really, really specific and targeted at the right person whose skill you want to replicate, and targeted at the area of what you want to learn from them. When you get the questions right, you'll get really, really good, relevant and useful answers, but the skill is all in getting the questions right. This is why it pays to be a master of language. Number 3, 5 ways to learn from everything, is get great feedback. Now, by great feedback, I don't mean get everyone around you to tell you how great you're doing. What I mean is get really useful feedback. Okay, now useful feedback is brutally honest, but it's also supportive and constructive. Okay, so you need to be careful who you ask for feedback, because you need somebody who's prepared to be honest with you and tell you what didn't work, because somebody who'll just tell you what you did well, that's useful information, but you also need somebody who'll be honest with you about what didn't work. Okay, these are shortcuts to success, basically. It saves you a lot of time and effort if somebody will come in and say to you, that didn't work. It saves you replicating it 10 times till you realise it yourself. That fresh pair of eyes can be really, really invaluable to you. Okay, but be careful who you ask, because you want to make sure it's somebody who will be honest with you, who's able to tell you what went wrong, but who will also give you some constructive feedback and some pointers in the right direction. But also make sure you don't ask somebody who has an agenda to pull you down, okay, because that can be really soul destroying, and what you want is honest feedback, not unnecessarily critical feedback. Okay, so be careful who you ask. You want somebody who's got no agenda to stop you winning. You want to ask somebody who wants to see you win, but who also is prepared to be honest with you. And if you are asked to give somebody else feedback, I always say to my practitioners on the training, do that person the honour of being honest with them, because only honest feedback is useful. Okay, so that's number 2. And that's number 3. Get good, useful feedback. Number 4, record and review what you're doing. So if you're trialing a project or a new strategy, record what you're doing so that you can review it later. And once you've done something 5 or 10 times, looking back at those records that you've made, whether they're written records or however you choose to record it, even if you take photographs of something, looking back at those records will give you patterns, and those patterns will be really, really invaluable to you. Those patterns will show you what works, what goes well, and what doesn't work, and what needs attention. So record and review what you're doing as you're doing it and after you've done it. Record everything that's relevant, or that seems relevant, or even might be relevant, because you don't necessarily always know what's relevant at the time. Sometimes some random little few things that you record at the time can turn out to be highly relevant when you look back later and you've made those recordings 10 times over. Okay, so that's number 4, record and review what you're doing. Number 5 is keep going. If you want to learn from everything, keep going. If you have a project you're trying to pull off, and even if you're struggling with it and it's gone wrong several times, keep going. Because by keeping going, you enable yourself to learn from what's going on. And if you keep going and keep tweaking it and keep changing it, we know that in the long run you will get there. Okay, keep going, and on the journey Be prepared to take credits for your achievements. So you might not be winning on the bigger picture of the thing that you're trying to achieve, but there will be small wins along the way, and take credit for all those achievements. Okay, we don't always win, but when we do win and when we allow ourselves the credit for those achievements, that's what builds our resilience and helps us keep going. And it's the keeping going that will guarantee that you will win in the end. If you keep changing things and tweaking things and keep going, you know in your heart, you can guarantee to yourself that you will win in the end. You will pull off whatever it is that you're trying to do. So I'll just review these for you, the 5 ways to learn from everything. Number 1 is cultivate an attitude of learning. Hugely important. Number 2 is ask great questions. Get those questions right. And pick the right people to ask as well. Pick experts in the field. If you're trying to do something and somebody else can already do it, find the person who can do it and ask the right questions. Number 3 is get honest feedback about what you're doing and how you're doing. Choose carefully. Ask somebody who's prepared to be honest with you, but who also will want to see you win. Okay, he'll be supportive. Number 4, record and review your efforts. So whatever you're doing, a daily journal or a record is hugely useful, and it will show you information that won't be available to you in other ways. Okay, so I'd urge you to record and review. If you want to get better at what you're doing, record and review it. And number 5, for goodness sakes, keep going. Whatever you're doing, whatever your current challenge, keep going. If it's not working, tweak it, change it, but keep going, and you know in the end you'll get there.